Hi and welcome. This is Anna Bevan Gravely with NCFREE, and I am joined by Mark Cavaliero, running in Senate District 17. Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, good morning, Anna. Yeah, so about me, I'm a lifelong resident of North Carolina. I am an Eagle Scout. I have a degree in economics from the University of North Carolina. I'm a retired Marine Colonel and veteran of the 2003 liberation of Iraq. I've got 3 kids, been married almost 27 years. It'll be 27 years in 2 months in this summer. And I am an assistant scoutmaster with Troop 202 in Cary. And the reason that is important to this is because just last night, I finished up teaching the American Business Merit Badge, one of my favorites. I had about 8 scouts on the Zoom call. This was the last of 3 calls that we did. And so we leveraged that technology to talk about American business. So, and I'm running for the state Senate District 17 because, I really feel like with the right leadership, North Carolina's best days are ahead of us. It's always been my home. It's where I grew up, where I went to school, got married, where I raised a family, and started several very successful businesses. And I really love our state, from the mountains to the coast, everywhere in between. And I've got a vision for North Carolina, and I want to see our state lead the nation in education, in opportunity, in infrastructure, technology. All those things that make us such a great place to live. I want to see us take it to the next level for our kids and our grandkids so that they can experience the freedom and the liberty that our founding fathers really had in mind when they created our great nation.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. So I think that goes directly into the next question of, have you ever owned a business or been in a management position within a business?
I have actually. I've owned several businesses. Can I tell you a story real quick?
Sure, please. Yeah.
So it goes back to 1992. And I was a first lieutenant actually, in the Marine Corps. I was stationed in the Western Pacific with 3rd Marine Division. And the division would send out Marine Expeditionary units to go out and do things, in that area of operation. And so I was with the 37th Expeditionary Unit. We went out, we were down in Thailand. And my job, I was a communications officer. My job was to set up computer networks so that when we moved, when my unit moved, we could always talk not only to our higher unit, but our adjacent and our subordinate units as well. And so that was my job. And this was in the early days of computer networking. And I really liked it. I mean, I loved doing what I did. I loved being a Marine, but I also loved the technology. And at that time, 1992 is when the idea first came in my head that, hey, you could do this in the civilian world and make some money, make a good living for a family. So that's when the idea first hit me that, hey, I might want to be an entrepreneur. I might want to start a company. Well, I finished up my active duty time in the Marine Corps and got out and still had this idea that just kept nagging at me to start a company. And so I did. Started working in the nights and evenings, out just working on computers, just trying to build up, a few businesses that I worked with and individuals. And finally in '96, I quit my day job and got started full-time with the company that became Carolina's IT. Now, Carolina's IT, I was the CEO, started it. Me and a friend of mine grew it up to 87 employees, 17 million in revenue. We were Fast 50 for 4 years in the Research Triangle area. We were, business, TBJ Fast 50. We were the Inc. 5000. So a lot of great accolades until last year, and I did an exit and sold the company. So 24 years basically from starting a business to running the business, recruiting, retention, profit loss statements, balance sheets, trying to figure out what can we offer that can help businesses so that we can be relevant and grow the company. And so that's what we did. Ran that company for 24 years, did everything from being a sales rep to being an engineer, to working, on the HR side, to recruiting. So I had pretty much done it all in terms of business there on, for Carolina's IT. And then I've got a real estate management company that I started right once I got out of the Marine Corps as well. So I've got some commercial real estate, some private real estate, or personal real estate that I own. So yeah, definitely some pretty strong business experience. That's basically what I've
Yeah.
been doing for the past quarter of a century.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. What would you say that the current level of federal and state taxation on businesses is too high, too low, or just about right?
Well, that's a great question. I think we're better. I think the overall tax burden is still too high. I mean, if you look at where we've come from in 2011, we were 46th out of the 48 states that actually had corporate tax, and so we've definitely come a long way. In fact, now we're one of the leading lower tax states in the Southeast, and I think you've seen the benefit of that. I think our rate now is 2.5%, really one of the lowest in the country, and you've seen that growth. And of course, there's always the naysayers that say, well, our rate used to be 7%. If you drop it from 7%, you're going to see revenues decline. Well, that didn't happen. Our revenues went from 18 billion in 2019 up to 24 billion. So I think we've seen the benefit of lower taxes in bringing businesses in, making it a great place to work, incentivizing growth. Those are all things that are good for everybody. And so I think you see the result of that tax rate that went from 7 down to 2.5%. And I think it's important to realize granularity in taxes as well. There's lots of different taxes. I mean, you look, we've got the corporate tax rate just on the state level, corporate tax rate, franchise tax, you got sales tax, you got your annual business registration, which is a pet peeve of mine, just ridiculous tax that you have to pay for basically doing nothing. You got unemployment taxes, you got state taxes, you got to pay tax when you have operations in other states. Then you got the feds, you got federal corporate tax, FICA, property, privilege taxes, gas taxes, telco taxes, and just on and on and on. That franchise tax is really one that draws my attention. That's a tax on the value of the business, and it's a tax you have to pay even if you don't make money in a given year. You pay the franchise tax. So yeah, I think the burden is too high. I think there's more that we can do, and I really I realize that there is an optimal level of taxation. If you go back to my economics days and study the Laffer curve, you got to have a tax rate that funds government to the level it needs to be funded, but you also need to incentivize business. So I think finding that happy medium is what's really important, and that's the secret to getting the growth just right. But I really want government to lean into being efficient. I want government to be to run as efficiently as I ran my business. I think there's always government folks will say, oh, we need more taxes, and there's a whole political party that thought that a 7% tax rate was just right, and that's about as low as you could go and sustain the government. And they fought it all the way. I mean, as the legislature dropped the tax rate at every point, the opposition party said, well, this is crazy. You're going to just drop government. It's not going to work. And of course, now you ask them, and I've seen some of your interviews, which are great interviews, by the way, and they say, well, I think the tax rate is about right. Well, that's hogwash. If they think it's about right, then why weren't they supporting dropping it from 7% down to 2.5%? Now, magically, 2.5%, the economy is humming, before the whole virus thing, and now they decide, well, it's about right. Well, I just think that's garbage. They've been proven wrong. I think there's room to do better. I want to see government focus on accountability and efficiency instead of, just more money. In my background, I'm a problem solver. It's what I do. I'm a quick learner, and I've got a history of going into tough situations as a leader and getting results. And in my 24 years as a CEO, it was rare, almost never happened, that you can solve problems by throwing money at it. The best solutions are solutions that unleash the creativity, unleash the initiative, the innovation of our people. And that's what's going to get us out of this ditch we're in right now, this COVID-19 business. It's that creativity. You're already seeing, vaccines that are coming out, and that comes through people, through companies that have market-based incentives to figure out problems. So that's what I would say in terms of tax rate. That's a near and dear to my heart issue. I actually, with just selling the company, looking at the amount of tax I'm having to pay, it's over a third of the money that company sold for is going towards tax. I think it's criminal. I think it's outrageous, and there's no excuse for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Do you feel it is appropriate for state or local governments to offer incentives to private businesses in consideration of locating, expanding, or conducting business in a specific part of the state?
Wow, you just hit on another one of my hot buttons. So as a business owner and a lifetime resident of North Carolina, I pay taxes all my life. As a business owner, I've created hundreds of jobs, over the years. Let me tell you a story. I'll share a story if you don't mind. But
Sure, yeah.
um, so, 2016, big company, Xerox. I mean, one of the larger companies in the nation. Huge company, huge presence in North Carolina. They had 6,200 employees in North Carolina at the beginning of the year. Well, they decided to do some restructuring and cost cutting, the things that these large companies do, and they're going to squeeze people a little bit more, get more productivity, which not always a bad thing, but you got to balance it. So they went from 6,200 jobs in North Carolina down to 1,400 jobs, or down to 4,800, which was a 1,400 job loss during 2016. And then they were promised some incentives up in Massachusetts, and so we're talking up there. But then in 2019, after they dropped 1,400 jobs, somehow they got $12 million for a promise of bringing 600 jobs to North Carolina. Well, and I heard about that, and as a business owner, my heart just sank. It was like, wait a minute, here, I don't get squat from the state. I don't get any incentives. I've been here for, at that point, 20 years in business. And here Governor Cooper goes and gives $12 million to Xerox to bring 600 jobs into North Carolina when they just laid off 1,400 people, just a few years ago. To me, that is ridiculous. I help finance, as a business owner, I help finance a company that as they came back in, were actually hurting me because it made the job market tougher. Fewer people to come to work for my company. So, and not only that, but they, when they laid off all those people, it made everybody's insurance or unemployment insurance go up. So, CEOs they're not stupid. These people, these CEOs of these large companies, they're going to negotiate for these incentives, and they're going to take your money if you let them. So, what I want to see incentives, benefits really that help all businesses across the board. So I don't like Governor Cooper or anybody for that matter, going and trying to pick the winners and the losers and say, okay, we're going to give incentives to this special business or this industry. Because, these corporations are going to act in their own best interests. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think the gatekeeper's got to be us, in politics and voters, to not let the government pick these winners and losers and not have special favors. So the politicians can go out and crow about, I brought so many jobs to North Carolina. Well, you didn't bring the jobs. You basically paid for the jobs using my money. So, I wouldn't say never, but I would say, boy, if I'm working that, a company negotiating with me is going to have a hard time getting North Carolina taxpayer money as an incentive. Now, what I would do is I would say, look, come to North Carolina because our tax rate is the lowest in the nation, because we don't have a franchise tax, because we've got great education, great quality of life. That's why companies want to come to North Carolina. And that's what you do to set the level playing field. So we're not just picking the winners and losers. So that's, another hot button for me, but that's the way I see it.
Yeah, a lot of energy and passion over there. I'm feeling it. So would you describe your personal opinion as to what the key principles of free enterprise in our economic system are?
Yeah, so, free enterprise system, that's basically what our country is really founded on. The foundation of individual liberty and freedom that we were guaranteed in our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. Going back to the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our founding fathers were really onto something, and they knew the type of freedom they wanted for us, for future generations. And it wasn't what they had experienced, as a part of England. They wanted us to be free to make personal choices and to act on those choices. And I think that is the foundation that all the other principles of free enterprise system really are built upon. The freedom to engage in the business we want. Me as a young lieutenant, having that dream of what I wanted for my family, that, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to start a company that could make a difference. I wanted to, to grow it so that I could provide jobs for people and so that I could, a profit motive. There's nothing wrong with profit. It's what drives the economy. Profit is not a dirty word. the ownership of personal property. Those are all things that are foundationally guaranteed by our Constitution. And that's why our free enterprise system works so well with our republic, our system of government, because people are free to own a business. They're free to offer what goods and services they want. As a Marine, I've looked over in North Korea. I've seen what happens when government overreach really stifles innovation and extinguishes the dreams of people. And I've seen what happens when leaders dictate and when the government is all about enriching them rather than serving people. And so, I think that's it. I think the secret, the key is that freedom, that individual freedom and liberty. Is what I would say. And going to other countries just makes me appreciate how special our nation really is. And so, government does some things really good. They protect the workplace. They do health and safety and environmental concerns. But, I would like to say that freedom, you need some restraints, and I think it's good to have government there. But, I think we should always err on the side of freedom and on, driving initiative.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And so this next question is it's very timely with all the conversations that we're having in our daily press conferences from the president and from Governor Cooper in this time of COVID-19 and the coronavirus. In your opinion, what is the appropriate balance in the scope of federal and state regulatory requirements on business? What, in your opinion, is the best way to balance the appropriate protections without impugning economic vitality?
Yeah, well, that's another great question. So the balance between regulatory requirements and economic freedom, I think what you have to have there is maturity, judgment, and wisdom, and that's where those things really come in. In the Marine Corps, we had a system of decision making that was based on something called the Boyd cycle, which went back to the Korean War and how American fighter pilots were able to outmaneuver and outcycle their Chinese and North Korean opponents, and they did it quickly. It's quick decision making, and that was to observe, orient, decide, and act, and do it again. To watch what happened and incorporate that into your decision making. I think that's what we need. We need business leaders. We need people that understand what these regulatory requirements do to businesses. And and I think there are certainly legitimate regulatory requirements. I mean, everybody wants a safe environment. Nobody wants to pollute, the environment. I think you need things like that. You need safety. But government overreach can really stifle businesses. And so, what we want to do is get government out of the way. Let government do the things that are essential. But in my mind, the less government, the better, because more government is not always the answer. Once you have that floor of what the government does really well, in ensuring liberty and making sure that health and safety and environment is taken care of, you got to look at it. I mean, we've got regulations that have been on the books for many years that probably are outdated, and I think that would be one of my initiatives, is to start going through these regulations that are there and take a hard look and make sure that they're justified, make sure that there's a reason for them, because I think a lot of politicians are well-meaning. They have the best of intentions, but then you go and see what the results are. There's unintended consequences that happen when sometimes to laws, and I think there's got to be a balance. I mean, you look at the minimum wage, and I think that's a great example of something that might sound good but has unintended consequences. I mean, you jack the minimum wage up to $15 an hour, and you're going to actually, where your intention might be to help people, you're actually going to stifle business, and you're going to create fewer jobs. And so that's the type of unintended consequences that we need to get government. There's got to be a balance and set the floor, but by all means, get government out of the way.
Yeah. So if elected, what would be your top 3 priorities as it pertains to business?
Top 3 priorities. Wow.
Yep.
Only get 3.
Only 3.
Okay. The basic thing that I want, I mean, my foundation of what I would want for government is accountability, cut waste and abuse, drive initiative, drive innovation, and transparency. And I've seen it as an IT provider here in North Carolina. I've seen firsthand how cozy relationships on state contracts are used to pick the winners and the losers. And I don't like that. But in terms of my specific 3 initiatives, I mean, the number one is the special favors. I would look hard at economic development policies that grant special favors to particular businesses or industries.
Mm.
I would look very hard at that. So that would be top of my hit list. Then that stupid franchise tax. I think we've got to take a look at that. We start reducing that franchise tax, and work on that, work to get that down. I think there's some things you can do in the tax structure. I think accelerating depreciations for businesses to give them incentive to go out and buy machinery, to make investments, especially in light of COVID-19.
Mm.
This is a great time to incentivize making investments in businesses. Well, the best way you can do that is tell this business owner, hey, great, you buy this $100,000 machine, or you invest this money into your business, you're going to be able to accelerate the deduction on the depreciation on that and deduct it all the next year. I mean, wow, that's going to light it up. You're going to have business people, hitting their lines of credit and going out and making some investments. And then I think the third thing would be taking a hard look at this certificate of need situation with the hospitals. In general, I like more competition, and I think that certificate of need law is another one of those that maybe there were good intentions to make sure you have good quality of care, but the result is you basically have monopolies, and monopolies are not good things, especially related to healthcare. I mean, if you look at healthcare in North Carolina, we've got a healthcare cost crisis in North Carolina. Things cost too much. Well, as a business person, I know that the way to drive costs down is to introduce more competition. So that would be the thing that I would take a hard look at.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with us, Mark. Is there a way that our audience and members can learn more about you?
Oh yeah, you can learn all about me. And I've got a big presence on social media, so they can do a search on my name. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook. My website is CAV, the number 4, NC.com. You can find out all about me as far as my positions. So, I'm out there, and I would ask you, hey, if you like what you hear, like, comment, share. Those are all good things. We got to increase the visibility. So that's, that's how you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day, and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thanks, Anna. I appreciate it.
Bye.